G'day Bambies, Kaleidow here and welcome to part 2 of creating my childhood home in The Sims 4. So if you guys haven't watched part 1, make sure you go ahead and watch that before you continue on with this one, because I talk a lot about the interior of the house, because we are just finishing up with the 2 last bedrooms, which is my bedroom and my brother's, which was also a guest bedroom at one point. But one day we decided that we were too big to be sleeping in the same room, so my brother got the biggest room for majority of the time, but we did often swap rooms around. But yeah, anyways, make sure you go check out the other video before you continue watching this one. I'll have the link down below and also it up the top there as a card for you guys to click. But yeah, I'm so happy to be continuing on with this. I am recording this the next day since the previous video, meaning I've gotten to read you guys' comments so far, and I'm really surprised what you guys think so far. Some people have said that the house looks quite big, which I was like, ooh, and some people were like, oh, it's a little bit small. And I think it was very muchly in the middle. It was a very normal kind of sized house. My room was very small. Maybe if there was like one more bedroom in the house, because it's 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. Maybe if it had like 1 more bedroom and 1 more bathroom, it could have been like felt a lot bigger than it was. But it is what it is, and I have a lot of childhood memories, good and bad, in this home, and it by far is not a perfect house. It's pretty old. As I said, it's like I think it was created like between like 1940s, 50s or 60s. I don't actually know when it was created, but it definitely has a mid-century kind of architectural design about it. It's very blocky and square. But anyways, let me talk a little bit about our bedrooms. So as I was saying, we didn't really grow up in like the cleanest kind of environment. The house is quite old. It wasn't derelict and falling apart, but there were cracks in the walls. Some of the wallpaper was quite aged, and it was the original wallpaper. My dad was very like, it must have cost a lot originally, because he really didn't want to take down the wallpaper, even though my brother and I would beg him that we would do it ourselves and paint the walls whatever color we wanted. I really wanted to paint my room green when I was little. That was my dream of all time. I was a huge frog lover, so I made sure to include a bunch of green things in my bedroom there, but I kind of had to just, you know, go with it with the blue wallpaper. Mine was the smallest bedroom. That is the room that I spent majority of my time in. When I say time, I mean like when my brother and I were swapping around our rooms. The room that I had as mine the most was that middle one, and my brother had the other one, which was quite larger, but I really didn't like the built-in cabinets that were on one whole side of the room. I really didn't like them. And so I actually tricked my brother into swapping bedrooms with me one day. And I didn't include it in this build, but there's actually a desk in my room, and it's still there to this day, and it's not my desk. It actually was my brother's, and I tricked him into swapping bedrooms with me. And when I moved all this stuff into the other room, I was like, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm keeping your desk because you have one built into the wall and I don't have any. So that's just like a funny little manipulative little Angeline thing that I did. I was probably like, I don't know, 11 or something. I really wanted his desk because I was going into high school, and I knew that he wasn't going to give it up. My dad wasn't going to buy me a desk. So that is how I do, apparently. So something that I did add into the kitchen here, we have a little mouse hole there. I swear they actually lived behind the fridge. I don't even know how they got there. Like, was there a hole behind the fridge? But I decided to put it right next to the back room door there, because then the mouse, you could see it running around and stuff. But every single winter we would have mice problems. They were field mice. They would come out of the paddocks around us, because we were basically kind of surrounded on 2-3 sides with just empty paddocks, sometimes with horses and cattle in them, but majority of the time they were quite empty, and that's where the mice came from. So that really sucked, and it was so annoying. My dad would always have traps around the house, so I used to get really sad when I would see them. I would wake up and go to get my breakfast, because Dad would cook us a big English breakfast every morning. I would go and grab my brekkie off the little island thing there, and I'd look to my side, and there would always be guaranteed a dead mouse. And very sad face, sad days. It used to make me not want to eat my brekkie. Ugh, God, so horrible. I don't know what I'll do right now if I had mice in my house. I think what I'll do is well, the thing is, you kind of just have to prevent them from coming in. So what my dad needed to do, and still needs to do, is just, I don't know, find whatever holes they're coming into the home and just fill them up or cover them up. But yeah, here we are moving around the house. I moved it a bit back because we actually have a really big yard. So when this house was built, it was I think it was the second house on our street. Our road is really small. It does continue on as a very off-road 4-wheel drive road if afterwards, but no one ever really drives at that part of the road. It kind of just, the bitumen just stops and then it goes to the highway. But yeah, we were the only, originally one of the only houses on the road, so lots of paddocks. My family used to own quite a lot of land on the street. Over time, a bunch of it was sold, which is unfortunate, but we still had quite a lot. The entire yard that the house is on is quite considerable, and we also had a huge I thought it was huge cow's paddock that really went far back. It wasn't super wide, but it went really far back, and that was where I spent a lot of my days playing imaginary games and exploring. We have a whole bunch of rocks and stuff everywhere. I do add that on the exterior of the home eventually. But in the paddock, we had so many more. And because I grew up in the granite belt, it was pretty normal to see stuff like that. People who would just leave these giant boulders in their yards because there was no way you could really get rid of them. They are so expensive to demolish because most of them, my dad would say they're called floaters or whatever. So it's like an iceberg where you only see 10% of it on the top, but it's huge underground. So yeah, I'm pretty sure this one that I'm adding in right now is a lot bigger than it seems. But I used to always go, while I was waiting for the school bus or before I walked to school, I would stand on that rock and pat the horses. We had a lady who was keeping her horses in our paddock for quite some time. It was really nice. I loved them, and I always have loved horses. And even though they weren't mine and I wasn't allowed to ride them, it was just so nice that I got to talk to them every day. And before that lady paid to have her horses in our yard, we used to have a family friend who would run cattle in there, and that was so much fun because often we would have little calves born in our paddock, and they were so mischievous. They would somehow find their way outside of the fences, find their way through it, and then they would end up in the garden. I just remember my mum yelling at this gorgeous newborn that is eating her garden, eating all of her flowers. And I remember that so well. It was just such a precious moment, and it was so cute. Calves are so smart, cows are so smart, and I really appreciate them. They're just such gentle, lovely creatures, and I feel like because I grew up in the country and really close to a lot of animals, a little bit differently to how an actual farmer would, I never really got to see them go off to like slaughterhouses or anything, so that wasn't really in my mindset. They were more like friends to me. While I can definitely kind of understand to a point how some people get a little bit disconnected to that thought if you actually grew up on a farm and you were taught from the get-go that they were not pets and that they were going to leave. But anyways, I was very lucky that I got to call them my friends. And yeah, I didn't really pet them that much as I got older. I kind of grew out of it. But horses, I always made sure I would give them a handful of grass or something. So we do have a pond area. Our yard is separated into like these different sections. So this one down in the corner here, it's what I would call like the jungle, because there was so many giant gum trees. We don't have gum trees or eucalyptus trees in The Sims 4 yet, so I kind of just had to make do, and these trees are huge. Like I swear they've been here before the house was here. So the one in the very front of the house, I actually made it a lot smaller than it is in real life. It is gigantic and much bigger than the house. Like when you look at it width-wise, it's nearly as wide as the house. But in The Sims, it would have looked a little bit silly if I did that, especially in the screenshots. Some people, when they would visit my house, they would be like, oh my gosh, your house looks so scary, because it was surrounded by so many huge trees. And I really liked it though, because of all of the trees. We had a lot of different wildlife and birds and stuff that would come visit. We had bowerbirds that would hang out in the back hedge there, and bowerbirds was so much fun because they would make their little playgrounds, as my dad would call them, where they would collect anything blue or shiny or whatever, and they would make these gorgeous little nest things. I don't think they were nests. I guess it was like a little attraction sort of thing is how my dad explained it. The male bowerbirds would collect all of these different little trinkets to attract a mate. So my brother and I were horrible to them, and we used to destroy their little playgrounds, but we thought it was like magic because they would recreate it by the afternoon. So it became a game for us, and they eventually left. I'm so sad. It's probably because of us, and also the neighbors poisoning them, because yeah, I know that's so sad, but the reason why they did it was because they were also like my dad, and they grew a lot of vegetables and had a lot of fruit trees, and bowerbirds are terrible for gardens. They love to eat everything. They're not a pest. I'm pretty sure they are native, but it was so sad because they're such pretty birds, and I really didn't like that my neighbors did that, but oh well, that's just how it was, and I just have such a fond memory of their little playgrounds in the backyard. Now, I made sure to put a lot of jasmine vines around the yard. So we have a big one just out the back door, which I actually made a cubby house in once, and when I dug through, I found that there was an old wagon wheel that had fallen down, and it was hidden underneath all of the vines. So I did pull it out eventually, but I just have it kind of sticking up there, and I thought that it's actually like a steering wheel or something for a ship, but it kind of reminded me of the wagon wheel that I once found in there. I did so much exploring in this backyard. It's actually quite bigger than this. It extends more. So here where we're working on the garden, it does extend a lot more to the left, and then our neighbors also have their veggie patch and stuff. We had this cool little bird cage thing that was once also my dad's laboratory, I guess. Laboratory, is that the word I'm thinking of? Not a toilet, actual like science sort of lab. And because he was a beekeeper, so he would do all of his sciencey things when he was beekeeping and working in that room. So I work on that a little bit later on in the video. But yeah, we also always had bee boxes in the yard, so next to the bird cage there. Now I'm gonna try to remember most of the sort of permanent plants that we had growing in the garden. We had a English mulberry tree, which is the one right in front of the bird cage there, which was so great to grow up with. Like every single year it was like a ritual. Like we would go up and climb throughout the tree, grabbing all of the mulberries, but it's gotten a little bit old now. It doesn't have as many mulberries, but a lot of my clothing when I was little was stained with mulberry juice because they're very, very messy. If you guys have ever had mulberries, they are extremely messy. We also had grapes. We had an apple tree that had, I think, 3 or 4 different types of apples on it. It was a grafted tree, which was pretty special. So every single branch would grow a different variety, and some varieties would grow more than the other ones. So the tree kind of looked funny. Like one variety would be a really small, tiny branch, and the other one would be like giant and taken over. But what else did we have? We had a whole bunch of nuts. I did make sure to put the macadamia nut tree, oh not macadamia, the walnut tree there. So that's also another thing that we did every single year. We would gather all of the walnuts and would wait until the outside green shell fell off, and then we would peel it off, and then we'd crack them, and on the back cement sort of area. But yeah, that was so many memories when it comes to gardening in this place. I've more happy memories outside, that's for sure. It was so much fun growing up with a big yard that had so many different sections to it. Like we had the garden, we had the little jungle area, we had all of the different big rocks and stuff that I used to imagine were like houses or a boat or something like that. Like I did spend lots of my time inside, especially when I got The Sims busting out. That's when like I started to spend a lot more time on the Xbox indoors. But when I was younger, my brother and I did play a lot outside. Because of that, it made the yard a little bit messy because, you know, kids are pretty messy, and we kind of would just leave our junk around the place, toys, everything. I add in some bits and bobs around the place later on, but I did have to do a couple big cleanups, and I was so surprised how many broken old toys I found in bushes and things just because I'd left them there. I would have just forgotten entirely about these toys. I would have finished my game, or Dad would have called us in for dinner, and then that would have been it. They would have been gone. But yeah, so now I'm just adding in some terrain. So at one point, they did replant. I think they sowed all of the seeds for the grass seeds. So there's some weird different areas of grass around the place. Down in the jungle area where the swing set is, which we don't have any swings in The Sims 4, so I just did the monkey bars. Near the swing set, there's this really different grass, which is super fine and this really lovely dark green. And I've never seen this grass anywhere else, but it grows really well. It's thriving down in that area, I guess because all of the runoff from the house, majority of it goes down into it, and often if it was raining a lot, it would flood on that whole side of the house. It was I just remember looking out my bedroom window and it would be like flooding on the entire side of the house and down into like the pond. But yeah, it was always a little bit like marshy around there. So something that I haven't really talked about yet about the pond is I included a giant lobster that is blue in there, and that is because when I was little, one of my weirdest, earliest memories is my mum and dad cleaning out the pond because it's got so many trees around it, so there's leaves constantly falling into it. They were cleaning it out and they found a giant dead yabby. They're not sure how long it was dead, probably like a month or so, but it was huge. And to this day, that is the biggest yabby that I've ever seen. If you guys don't know what a yabby is, it is a freshwater, I guess, lobster. They're quite small compared to lobsters, and they do look quite different, but they have pinches and they usually live under rocks and stuff in creeks, inland. I'm not sure. Have you guys seen them elsewhere? I'm pretty sure they're freshwater only. But yeah, we had one in our pond. How weird is that? I have no idea to this day how it got in there. My dad doesn't either. He said that possibly it crawled into it because we have like a causeway not that far from the house. We live at the top of a hill, so at the base of the hill there was like a bit of a little creek thing, so it could have maybe crawled all the way up, but I don't know. It's sort of weird. Maybe somebody put it there. Now I'm chucking in a bunch of stuff around, and trust me, there was a lot more than that. We would have like random sheets of galvanized iron just lying around. Would have pieces of wood, bricks. We had so much like just junk lying around, and over time, like right now, it's pretty tidy because we have, like, as I got older, done a bunch of like dump trips to get rid of stuff, but there isn't actually that much rubble in The Sims 4 that I could work with, so I just put around like random bits and bobs. So yeah, and also this terrain tooling, or not terrain tooling, just painting the terrain to make it seem a little bit more realistic. I planted a bunch of things in the garden too, so some more things that my dad would grow. He would always have not garlic, but I think he did try garlic. Onions, always onions. We always had potatoes, always were growing potatoes. My dad has started growing herbs in the garden, which is kind of weird because usually you're meant to grow herbs in like pots and stuff, but they're growing like huge. Tomatoes, we always had tomatoes in the garden. They were really yum too. Have you guys ever had homegrown tomatoes? They're so much better than the ones that you buy from the shops. I can tell you they are like 100 times better. The flavor is just incredible and really rich. And then the ones at the shop, they just taste like cold and rubbery and they don't have any flavor at all. I grew up with the best quality vegetables. So I guess in a way I was a bit spoiled when it comes to veggies, and because of the garden, like my dad would sometimes just randomly buy different seeds. Like he really loved growing parsnips too, which I hate, but I usually would be open to try just about anything because of it. So I'm really grateful to Dad for teaching me to be able to eat basically anything. But yeah guys, we are coming up to the end of the video. I had so much fun creating my childhood home and talking to you guys about some of my memories and stuff that we did in the house. And before you go, I would love to hear if you guys have any cherished childhood memories that you would like to tell me down below in the comments. That'd be awesome. We can talk down there and really discuss things, because I feel like it's been really enlightening, I suppose, to go back and create this home. And yeah, let's just like make a little bit of discussion about like random childhood memories down below. That would be awesome. But yeah guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and click that bell for notifications. But yeah, I hope you guys all have a fantastic one. I love you all to bits, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.